It's going to be over with pretty soon. We've obliterated their Navy. We've obliterated their just about everything there is to obliterate. We're flying wherever we want, Pete. We have nobody even shooting at us. They have, I mean, and as you know, their leadership is gone. Their leaders are gone. They pick new leaders, they're gone. They pick new leaders, they're gone. And now they're looking for new leaders again.
Oil prices rising today as the U.S. gains support to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and takes action to supply energy markets and push prices down. Welcome back to the second hour of the Big Money Show. I'm Jackie DeAngelis, along with my industrious co-host on this happy Friday. And with us for the hour, National Review columnist Caroline Downey. Welcome.
All right.
President Trump is looking to calm oil markets, getting Israel to stop striking energy sites in Iran. Now, Europe and other allies may actually step up in the strait as well. 7 countries, including the UK, France, and Japan, are backing a coalition to keep the strait safe for commercial ships and oil tankers. Also, the Trump administration is planning strategic petroleum reserve releases and unsanctioning Russian and Iranian oil, something Energy Secretary Chris Wright says will kick into gear very soon.
The market has seen that the United States is going to be very pragmatic here. We have an interruption of oil flows, and we want to fill it every way we can, from SPRs, from floating barrels that are just lined up to go into China, to any other actions we can take.
So what's the timeline from the unsanctioned to the usable supply?
With unsanctioning, I mean, within days, within 3 or 4 days, that oil will start to arrive at ports. And of course, most refineries are near ports. So pretty quickly.
So it looks like the administration has a pretty solid plan, Caroline. And we were talking about duration, the fact that the stars seem to be aligning with respect to the strategic operations that are being carried out here. And I'm looking at oil right now, trading at 98. It's under $100 going into the weekend. We have seen some volatility with it spiking, but then quickly coming lower. And the only thing I've been thinking regarding prices throughout this conflict so far has been that prices would be so much higher if it wasn't for Donald Trump's domestic energy policy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think just laying that groundwork by tapping into energy and expanding energy independence in America really has kind of immunized us in a lot of ways from some of the worst of the fallout when it comes to oil and energy. But I will say, like, filling the stop gaps, that's all well and good for the temporary short term. But the long term, the question here is, how do we open the Strait of Hormuz? Because the greatest leverage that the Iranian regime has is to attack the energy infrastructure. And that's not just to prevent oil from getting through the Strait of Hormuz, but also the Qatari liquid natural gas, which has been pretty significant. And while we have all but decimated much of the Iranian regime, or the remnants of it, the surviving mullahs, traditional military, they still have several thousand of sea mines. They have drones. They have fast boats. And so I know that the military right now is working on deploying all of our weapons that can counteract some of those mines, so we can make that strait actually easy for transportation. And I think what's been most amazing about this is the international partners who have stepped up, the ones that we didn't necessarily expect. So we know that the United Kingdom, France, they've been a little sheepish about getting ships to do the escort in the Strait of Hormuz.
Words for sheepish.
Sheepish, but India and Pakistan are actually participating in the escort, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Brian, do you have confidence that this is what's needed right now, and that it will work to reopen the strait, or that, maybe calling on some of these so-called allies is not really going to help?
I don't know if the allies are going to help that much. I do think it's good for them to be there and show that they care, and that they're not going to back down when we potentially have a need. But I think we can, I think we can beat Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not saying it's going to be super simple, but I'm confident that the U.S. armed forces can beat Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, okay? So I just think that's going to happen. If they're as formidable as they maybe appear to be or might be, can you imagine how much worse it would be to try to do this 5 or 10 years from now, when all of what they have is protecting nuclear weaponry? I know you can't do the what if in everything in life, but honestly, if this was protecting nuclear weapons, it would be game over. We wouldn't be able to do a thing. We would have to live in a world where they're constantly pointing something deadly at us all the time. So that, to me, that is compelling, okay? I think we can beat them now. I think waiting would have been I don't even want to imagine what it would be like living in that world, because Iran is like North Korea, except not completely 100% incompetent. Like, we live with that North Korea, but North Korea is so backwards that we don't spend a ton of time worrying about it. That would not be the case with Iran.
And this is the argument that the president has made, Marcus, regarding the nuclear weapons and what life could potentially look like. The problem is when you're courageous enough to head off a state sponsor of terrorism like this, that no other president was willing to do, to take this on because of what the potential consequences could be. People don't see what could be 10 or 20 years down the line because we have no crystal ball to play it out for us. You know the consequences are going to be bad, but because it doesn't actually happen, you've got Democrats right now saying there was no clear and present threat to the United States. This is a war that is completely made up by the president, and that's a narrative that they spin to half the country that believes it.
Well, we know the Middle East has been in turmoil for decades, many decades, as long as I've been alive. And so the fact that even anybody would think it's made up is almost just needs to be dismissed. We know that the move to protect human life, both in Iran and outside of Iran, was necessary. We also know that there's an economic consequence to doing that, and we're experiencing that. As it relates to other countries showing up in the Strait, I think it's also another price mitigator. And when you look unified in your front, other countries coming there, unsanctioning the tanker, releasing reserves, those are different levels that you could pull on. Had those levers not been pulled on, we could be sitting at 115, 120. What I don't understand is, where is the Venezuela oil production? Why am I not hearing about how we're able to solve some of this with Venezuela?
Aren't we hearing about that?
Why aren't we hearing about it?
But we are. I mean, I think that they're bringing down barriers for companies to come in and develop those resources.
But why aren't we reassuring the market?
They're ramping it, but it's not at full capacity
well, I mean, it takes
right
a
now.
little while. They were under like.
It's not going to help tomorrow.
It'll take 2 to 3 years.
So should we not do it? Let's not do it.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
But I think you need to
Jackie and I are looking at you saying, stop.
Marcus is like, why don't we have more Venezuelan oil? I'm like,
that's not what I said. I don't expect it to show up tomorrow. But I want to give people comfort that this isn't the only source of oil production. Yep. And we want to give people comfort that there are alternatives being made for the future. And so risk mitigation, price mitigation is about information and people having some comfort. The Venezuela piece would make me say, oh, maybe there's more out there.
Okay, here's the good news.
No.
98 WTI, 110 Brent. We talked yesterday, the spread typically $2 to $8. The spread between those two, 12 to 13, which shows the pressure on Europe is greater than the pressure on us right now in terms of price at the pump. That's good in terms of maybe that pressures them into helping, I don't know, show up in the Strait of Hormuz one of these days. We'll see. Here's the bet. Well, so Marcus, I agree with you. Larry Kudlow this week, I think, floored all of us when he sat in that chair and he was like, these oil companies should be thanking Trump for being in business. And also, don't talk to me about price at the barrel being a couple bucks higher 3 weeks after we are changing the world. I agree with that. That said, I don't want to discount the way people feel. And here is my concern. Average growth for real GDP and PCE close to zero after a 20% increase in price shock. We're more than there, right? We're at like 100%. 75 to 80% of the time, a negative quarter follows. Now, that's not a recession. A recession technically is 2 quarters. If you have a larger oil shock above 40%, a negative quarter has always followed in this analysis by Deutsche Bank. Now, Brian, don't look at me. Let me finish. So 1 negative quarter, we could all sit here and argue, is it worth it or not? Sure, actually, fine. 2 quarters, recession, okay, let's, see how we feel. But that's just the data. The White House is aware of the data, and they're working on, I'm sure, a limited time frame. But I think that's what the consumers are up against. Marcus, you talked about borrowing costs for companies, for people.
On a SOFR basis.
floored about the rate of change higher in yields. You're up 40 basis points in 3 weeks. That to me is just showing things aren't unhinged. This is not April 9th Liberation Day, but it's worrisome for me.
Is there anyone at the table that can get around this notion, which is whether it's gas prices, shipping costs, insurance costs, yields, borrowing costs? We have seen worse than this in all of those aspects over the course of the last 5 years, and we have experienced that. Plus, given the strategic nature of all the operations and how flawlessly they've been executed so far, you've got an administration not only willing to take this on, but doing it in probably the most precise fashion that we've ever seen. It's Friday now of week 3. I'm going to give them 2 more full weeks to do this because he said it would be 4 to 5 weeks. I mean, is there anybody here that can agree with me that thinks everything's actually going to be okay? And within that 2 weeks, you're going to see the people uprise, overthrow this regime, and start a transition government. And wow, you know what? Stocks will rip, oil prices will go down, the yields will start to recorrect and rebalance themselves. That's the scenario.
You know what's
that I
interesting
actually see.
what you say, everything's going to be okay? Like, I think your definition of okay and mine is you're going to change fundamentally the power dynamics in the world and in the Middle East with respect to probably our top 3 adversary, Iran, okay? If you're on the left, I don't think you get excited about fixing Iran. Right? That's the problem is I think if you're normal, you want to fix Iran. If you're on the left, you say, well, Iran's kind of part of the thing I tend to support with Hamas and Palestine. So you start with what's okay. You know, what does okay look like? And if you define the world as getting rid of a terrorist sponsor, I think things are going to be okay. So it may take a while, but I think things are going to be okay.
The MAGA base supports Trump wholeheartedly in this Iranian operation. Just in case there's any confusion about what's happening online and some of the dissent about whether the timing was right or whatever. Also, I think it's hilarious that this standard of imminence, Democrats saying, was it imminent or not? That's a made-up thing. There is no legal requirement for that. It's literally up to the commander-in-chief's judgment. That's it. But beyond that, there are independent voters that we need to worry about. They may not have the political tolerance for the energy disruption that they have now. I mean, let's just see what it looks like in 2 weeks. But it's not just Democrats and Republicans, it's the independents that we have to worry about. And I think the case has still not been made to them why this was necessary. Although from our vantage point, you know, restoring geopolitical stability by getting a menace out of the region, out of the world, that is good.
I would argue that stabilization of oil going forward by eliminating that menace will also be good. And so when you start drilling more here and you stabilize Venezuela and you unlock what could be coming out of that region, you could see stabilization and actually affordability could get a lot better faster.
And quickly, there's some good buying opportunities out there, not to conflate markets with much bigger issues, that is war and taking out terrorist regimes. But I got an email from someone saying you can buy a Meta bond right now at a 5.5% yield. You could buy that all day long and just watch that money come in. So there are opportunities where people are saying, like, haven't seen that in a while, like it, buy it. Again, when you think about people trying to make money.
The S&P is down more than 4% right now. We had the year-to-date tallies up a little bit earlier. So I think smart money is probably doing that, Taylor.